The reverse is the case with advanced countries, where see normally they are very rather sanitatively very perfect, and they are having stringent norms of their sanitation, but they are sensitive to a very small dose of the organisms of infectious type, and they do not have, because they are not vaccinated time and often, and because of their very high sanitation levels, a small quantity or small number of people vaccinated do not allow the transfer of these organisms to other individuals, and they do not have very high herd immunity. So herd immunity as such seems or sounds good, that the small number of people, magnitude of the people in a community if are immune, others also release their immunity, is always not true. Normally herd immunity sometimes reflects the poor sanitation. So these are some factors related to the disease causing agents and the epidemiological studies. If we go back to the slide again, we will now describe the rather other factors like general health of an individual. See, people may be immune or sensitive, susceptible to the disease depending on the genetic makeup of immunity. Body has been awarded with God has gifted us the immunity powers of 3 layers, and if we are poor in our genetic makeup, we have this. Otherwise, because of malnutrition also, our health may go down. So if we may be genetically sound, but if we are not taking the right food and proper food, then again immunity may go down. So this is a very important factor for the communities in our tribal regions. Our Gujarat has got tribal areas where time and often even government reports these reports of the ill health because of the malnutrition. Their food is very limited nutritionally, they are not having rich food, so they are suffering from this type of common disease. Any infectious disease they are sensitive to, not even infectious diseases. Our most of the population in our country that is suffering from the iodine deficiency, because our soil is lacking this iodine, and particularly the terrais of the high peak regions and the seashore regions, they are also suffering from the iodine deficiencies. And this type of malnutrition leads to number of disorders, because if we consider these particular factors where infectious agents are not involved, but there are some malnutrition conditions which leads to, say, hormonal imbalance, and thyroid like disorders may occur because of the deficiency of the iodine. Age is another factor. We know children are very sensitive because their immunity is not well developed. The young people are very resistant to the rather diseases, and in a community where there are large number of young people, there the immunity level of the whole country or the province is very high. The elderly people, the gerontological studies of epidemiology indicate that when we grow older, our immunity also subsides, and so elderly people are also the risk group of the diseases to occur. So epidemiologically, children, the elderly people, and if we take women as a factor, because of the physiological differences in male and females, females are normally susceptible to typical type of diseases, and estrogen, androgen changes in the female body that leads that makes them more susceptible to certain diseases. So these are the factors of this epidemiological occurrence of the diseases. And in the next slide we may further study the how are these epidemiological studies carried out. They are to be epidemiological studies are, as madam has initially said, it is about the occurrence of the disease, that is because of some agent, or what are the reasons. If it is not a infectious disease, what are the reasons? They could be socio-economic problem, there could be a environmental problem. So causative agent, what is the causative agent? Sometimes the habit of the people is also important. Say cigarette smoking leads to respiratory disorders, we know these days. This causative agent in that case is a habit. So habit, the age, and this is also a factor. The reservoirs presence, the see, if we these days see in our country, because of that animal cruelty law, we have number of dogs in our streets. So there is a high risk of rabies now, and one should consider this type of facts of the reservoirs present in the community to spread diseases. Even many viral diseases may be harbored by these dogs and street dogs particularly, and they become the very threat agents of the disease spread. We may further go to the analysis of the descriptive epidemiological studies, where time is very important. We know some diseases may occur at a particular time, say in the season of monsoon we get rainfall, and then number of organisms increase in our drinking water, and because of the drinking water sewer mixing due to heavy rain, there is a mixing of the sewer material with the rainwater, and drinking water sources are contaminated, and then this time also plays a role. And every time the prevalence of the disease or lowering of the disease incidences is not the same. So time factor is very important. In the epidemiological studies, these technical studies are very important, and they are studied with the past effect studies in the rather existing circumstances studies, and these studies have their own outcomes in different cases. So in the studies are carried out in three forms. The descriptive one, as I told you about the age factors, geographical distribution. Analytical studies is another aspect of the epidemiological studies, and analytical studies actually it determines the potential factors of the descriptive studies outcome. Say for example, if we say cigarette smoking leads to cancer, all the time it may not be true, because many cigarette smokers may say they are not suffering from this disease. But how can this be established, whether cigarette smoking leads to cancer or it is not? That requires some analysis. So analytical studies are very important. That actually involves the actual cases of the disease person and those who are not suffering from the disease. Both the types of groups are studied, and these studies give us a clue to this. So there are different technical terms utilized for this, which we may not go into the detail at this stage, because this itself is a very wide spread science. If we further enter into the studies of analytical type, it may include next slide will tell us about experimental studies. The third aspect of the epidemiological studies after descriptive and analytical, the experiments are conducted in the community with the healthy individuals as well as with the diseased individuals. If the diseased individuals are given medicine, that is also a part of the experimental studies. They are given medicines, they are called the clinical trials. So clinical trials are carried out even with the vaccines. If vaccine is given in the community, then and the studies are carried out whether that vaccination is effective or not effective, in which community, in which age group, which other factors, whatever descriptive immunology has dictated us about that disease can be very well studied with the experimental epidemiology, where the studies are conducted and surveillance outcome of the diseases, which Madam may tell us about.
What is surveillance? Surveillance is the to assess the analytical study. The physician give you the data, and this data they are published. Please slide please. They are published in the CDC in the USA. The CDC is the center of the disease for the control and the prevention, and they publish the morbidity and the mortality rate in the weekly magazine, and this report they are then at the end of the year they are published together, and this gives you the important clues about the spread of the epidemics in the community. The data are published weekly and summaries are published almost end of the year in the USA. And after understanding the spread of the transmission of epidemic disease, the epidemiologists can develop the methods to control the infectious disease. The public health measures and the safety depends on the methods and the findings of the epidemiologist. So if it is the foodborne disease, then the samples are discarded. If the waterborne disease, then the water that should be chlorinated. So the measures you can take. If it is insect borne, then the spraying of the insects, they are also the insecticides, they are also very important to control the disease like the malaria. The reduction and the next slide please. This graph, it shows that by taking the measures of the control of the infectious disease, the death rate from the infectious disease per the 1 lakh population per year, it has gone down right from the 1900. See, the rate was up, the mortality rate, and then in 1920 it was at a peak. But as the control measures, they are used throughout the world, this rate, it has gone down, and in 1940 it shows the little bit rise, and then again 1960, and in 1990 this is almost nil. So the control measures, they are very important to control the epidemic disease. The invention of the vaccines, that has also controlled many infectious diseases like the smallpox. This is the disease which was the curse of the god for the community. You must have seen the signs, the lesions on the face of the people. At that time the vaccine was not available, but now it is totally controlled, eradicated disease in the community by the vaccine. So vaccine is the important prophylactic immunization, that is very important measures for the control of the epidemic disease in the community.
Now, there are certain diseases which are in the past they were reported, then they subside, like plague. Plague was known very long back in our country. Again it reappeared in Surat. So what is that reappearance? That is called re-emergence of the disease. So those diseases which occur in the community, and then when they reappear, they are said to be as re-emerging disease. So this type of dangerous diseases, now this plague is not due to, or plague-like symptoms is not due to the Yersinia pestis, but it is due to some other organisms. But symptoms and the disease characteristics are almost the same. Thus, there could be re-emergence of the disease even by the same agent. Say for example, smallpox, as madam said, has been eradicated. That has become a threat too, because now when these organisms are not prevailing in our community, our herd immunity is totally zero for the smallpox, and ultimately if a single dose of if a single emergence of that smallpox virus may be due to some war weapons rather harboring, if some agency releases this virus, then it becomes a very horrible picture for the community. So sometimes this type of mass rather eradication of the diseases, they require some special precautions for the community. For the re-emergence, it may not take place. Those precautions should be stringently taken, and these clues are obtained from the epidemiological studies, because re-emergence of the disease is a very important aspect. Many other diseases, they are reoccurring, reappearing, and many a times because of the genetical changes in the organisms, there is a shift of the organisms rather ability to cause disease, and they may come back to the community. There is an emergence of the newer diseases. Previously they were not existing, but now they are into the community, like H1N1, like this swine flu, many zoonotic diseases which were previously said to be only animal borne diseases, now are becoming the human diseases. Anthrax like disease have been now threatened because of the because it has become a war weapon, and this emerges as a new disease. So there are a number of diseases that are reappearing. Finally, madam, you may little
Yes.
draw the attention of the students towards the nosocomial diseases.
Yes, they are also The nosocomial infections, they are the hospital-borne infections. The organisms which are present in the hospital environment, like the Staphylococcus aureus, Escherichia coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, they are very dangerous and they transmit into the patients who are admitted into the hospital, and they cause the infections like the wound infection in the operation theater and the other sore throat like infections. So these are the very dangerous infections, and the epidemiologist must study the nosocomial infections in the hospital environment. That is also one of the important tasks of the epidemiologists. These organisms are the Enterococcus species, Escherichia coli, Staphylococcus aureus, other Staphylococcus infections. Where they are present? They are present either in the patients, other patients, hospital environment, the patient's own normal flora, healthcare workers who visit the hospitals. So the medical devices, they are also the source for the nosocomial infections. How can we control the nosocomial infection? The most important step is to recognize their occurrence and establish the policies to prevent their development. Infection control committee is there, so which monitor the nosocomial infections in the hospital and give you the advice to how to control the nosocomial infections. So the very recent example I give you, that is in the last year, Kapadvanch, that is in the state of the Gujarat, the hepatitis B virus, they are transmitted by the injections, needles. So the syringe and injections, they were not used as a disposable. So they are the source for the transmission, and the disease was the epidemic in the Kapadvanj. Lot of people, they died due to the hepatitis B infections. So the measures, they should be taken to control the outbreak of the epidemics into the community. So I would conclude the epidemiology and the health, and I hope that the students, they have understood it well, and if they have any question, please they can ask us.